Family, friends, welcome to Tony's Barbershop. This is the place where we come together and we reason and we share knowledge. And we have brother Chris in the hot seat, and Chris is a good friend of mine, and he's a truly is a scholar when it comes to reggae music. He's very passionate, and I know he's doing some writing at the moment. Look at the history, and does a lot of research in that particular area. And it's always a pleasure to be in Chris' company because he's got a little vibe about him. And one thing I would say about Chris, he really loves people. Brother Chris, how are you keeping? That's the first thing.
Thanks, Brother Dougie.
Fantastic.
Good to meet you as always.
Good, yeah. Well, Brother Chris, as you know, that last week we lost our great legend, Anton Ellis, who was a great musician. I know that you're probably a bit down at the moment, because I'm a bit down as well, because he really is a legend. But before we was talk about Anton Ellis, man, how you got into your thing of music? And give us a little background about yourself, man, my friend.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, I got into music. I started to play at house parties from the age of 10. Because what happened was my father had an Hitachi record player. He had the turntable and all the stereo components. And what happened was, my father came over in the early 60s, and ever since he came over in the 60s, he used to go and buy his records at a place called Rita and Benny's up at Stanford Hill.
Right.
And he had a collection of records as long as anyone's arm. It was gigantic. And they used to stack them on top of one another. So curiously now, when I was 6 years of age, I used to go into the record collection. And I used to just take the records out because I used to think of frisbees. When you throw frisbees as kids, I used to think of frisbees. But my dad says, "Chris, don't." I said, "Father, why? I want to throw it. Isn't it a frisbee?" He says, "No, look on it. It's got like a label on it. It's got like a name, and look, you can actually play it." So he took it out of my hands and he put it on the turntable, and I noticed that the tune was like I said, these tunes were like from back in the 60s and the 70s. This was maybe the early 80s. And I'm thinking, I never heard those types of tunes before. Because all I was hearing was pop tunes, like Madonna at that time. You were hearing like Elton John. But these tunes were like roots. It's like heaven, like paradise tunes. I call them paradise tunes. In other words, these are God-sent tunes. So after a while, I started to become curious, and I started to, when my dad wasn't looking, I'd go behind his back and take them out and play them. And then to a point where I even used to sometimes scratch them up. Because when you're young, you take pins and you start to scratch. And then he used to give me a hiding. He said, what are you doing? And then I was about 6 or 7, and then a few years later we started to have like house parties. Then because they knew I liked the music and they knew I knew how to control the stereo, they would give me the honour of like selecting the records, and I'll put them onto the turntable and I'll play them, and then I started to become very good at what I was doing.
Age of what?
I was age of 10 at the
10
time.
at the time, okay then. So you selected it.
I started at the age of 10. And then what happened was, when my parents used to give me like pocket money to go and buy sweets, but I never always used to like to go and buy sweets. Sometimes I would go and buy records. And there was a shop in Bruce Grove before you get to the bridge, on opposite McDonald's. It will be on your left hand side, going towards Bruce Grove. There was a shop called All Sorts.
Okay then.
And it used to be like a second-hand shop. They closed down many years ago, about 10 years ago. And I used to go in there, and the